Hi, first graders. Today we are reading the story of Rapunzel. Our learning objectives are to review the elements of fairy tales, identify characters, setting, and events in a fairy tale, demonstrate an understanding of the word delight, use a graphic organizer to compare and contrast 3 fairy tales. Our key vocabulary are delight, longed, merciful, and rage. Delight is a noun, and it means joy or great pleasure. The puppy played in the park with delight. Longed is a verb, and it means wanted something a lot. The children longed for a snow day. Merciful, sorry, the cat is trying to walk on the computer. Merciful is an adjective, and it means able to forgive someone. Amelia was merciful and stopped teasing her little brother when she saw that he was becoming sad. Rage is a noun, and it means strong anger. The pirate was in a rage when he realized that he had lost his treasure. I'd be in a rage too. What was the name of the fairy tale that we heard last? Rumpelstiltskin. So we read Rumpelstiltskin and Sleeping Beauty. So let's think about those 2 stories. Were they fiction or nonfiction? They were fiction. And what magical characters were in Sleeping Beauty? Fairies. And how about in Rumpelstiltskin? Rumpelstiltskin, right? Because he was able to do magic. He turned straw into gold. What were some of the problems that the characters in these stories faced? What about in Sleeping Beauty? The princess was cursed. What was her curse? That she would prick her finger on a spindle and she would die. But one of the other fairies made it so that instead of her dying, she would just fall asleep for 100 years. But that's still a problem. And how about in Rumpelstiltskin? The miller's daughter had to go and spin straw into gold for the king, or else, right? And then Rumpelstiltskin came along, and she made promises to Rumpelstiltskin that caused problems later on because one of those promises were what? To give away her first baby. Okay, but how did those stories end? How did Sleeping Beauty end? The prince came, right? And then they lived happily ever after. And what about in Rumpelstiltskin? The queen figured out the name and she was able to keep her baby. And then they lived happily ever after. Okay. So those stories, were they fairy tales? Yeah. And what made them fairy tales? What were some of the characteristics? What was the setting? Once upon a time. And were there problems and solutions? Yes. Was there fantasy or magical events? Mm-hmm. And did they end happily ever after? Yeah. So this is a Venn diagram. You've seen these before when we were doing other CKLA domains. And remember that each of these circles, so we've got a circle here, and here, and here. Okay, each of those circles represents something, right? In this case, they are representing the fairy tales that we've read, or including the one that we're going to read today. Okay, and the center, or the places that overlap, show similarities between the circles that are overlapping. So this part right here is an overlap of the Rumpelstiltskin, Rapunzel, and Sleeping Beauty. So anything that we put here has to happen in all 3 of the stories. Okay, this one, this chunk, is only shared between Sleeping Beauty and Rumpelstiltskin. So that's going to be the similarities between those 2. This chunk is between Rumpelstiltskin and Rapunzel. So it'll be the similarities between those two. And then this one right here is the similarities between Sleeping Beauty and Rapunzel. And then anything that's in this chunk, that's just Sleeping Beauty, just Rumpelstiltskin, and just Rapunzel. So what was a similarity between Rumpelstiltskin and Sleeping Beauty? They both had spinning wheels, right? So I'm going to put a picture of a spinning wheel. Okay, and what's another thing that was the same between them? Think about the characters. What's something that they both had? They both had royal families, right? They both had a king, and they both had a queen, and they both had a baby. So they had royal families. I'm going to draw a crown for my royal family, and I'll give it some jewels. Beautiful. Okay. What is something that was only in Sleeping Beauty? You can think about the magical characters in Sleeping Beauty. Fairies, right? There were no fairies in Rumpelstiltskin, only in Sleeping Beauty. So, right, fairies. Okay. What else happened in Sleeping Beauty that didn't happen in Rumpelstiltskin? What was the problem? She was cursed, right? So I'm going to write curse. Now, what were some things that only happen in Rumpelstiltskin? Think about the magical characters again. Rumpelstiltskin, right? I'm not going to write his whole name. I'm just going to write Rumpel because Rumpelstiltskin is a really long name. Okay. And what else? Think about the problem. She had to make promises, right? Were there any promises in Sleeping Beauty? No. And if you can think of some more similarities or differences, that is perfectly fine. But this is what we're going to start with today. Okay. And we can't fill out any of these other sections yet because we haven't read Rapunzel. But at the end of the story, we're going to be able to add to this Venn diagram, okay? All right, let's erase this and we will come back to it at the end. Okay, we've done this already, and what we are doing is we're looking at the picture and we're thinking about if the things that are in this picture could happen in real life, or if they are made up or imaginary / couldn't happen in real life. And if there's anything in here that couldn't happen in real life, we're going to say that this picture shows us fantasy. But if everything in this picture shows us something that could happen in real life, we're going to say it's a picture showing reality. So let's look at this picture. Is there anything in here that is imaginary or that couldn't happen in real life? No, everything in there looks like it could happen in real life. There's a king and a queen and a baby. There's some cats. All of those things are real, right? So would this be fantasy or reality? This picture shows reality. How about this one? Is there anything in here that is imaginary or that isn't real or couldn't happen in real life? The fairy. So is this going to be a picture showing fantasy or reality? Fantasy. How about this one? Think about what's happening in this picture. She's asleep for 100 years. Is that something that could really happen in real life? No. So is this fantasy or reality? Fantasy. What about this one? Think about, what is Rumpelstiltskin doing in this picture? He is turning that straw into gold. Is that something that can happen in real life? No. So is this fantasy or reality? Fantasy. Remember our key vocabulary? We have got delight, longed, merciful, and rage. Do you know what is in this picture? This is a special kind of lettuce called Rapunzel. In today's story, the characters experience a problem because of Rapunzel. I want you to listen carefully to learn how Rapunzel causes a problem for the characters in this story. If you're already familiar with the story of Rapunzel, I want you to listen carefully to see how this version might be different from the one that you know. There once lived a man and his wife who more than anything in the world wished to have a baby. Finally, one day, they learned that their wish would come true. Now, at the top of their house, in the very back, there was a window. And from this window, you could see a garden full of beautiful flowers and fresh vegetables. But around the garden was a high wall, and no one dared to enter the garden because it belonged to a mean witch. One day, the wife stood at the little window and looked down into the witch's garden. There, she saw fine-looking leaves of Rapunzel, which is a kind of lettuce. And it looked so fresh and so green that she felt she simply must have some. Day after day, she longed for it. Hey, what does longed mean again? What does it mean if she longed for it? It means that she wanted it really, really badly. The more she wanted it, the more she became pale and sad when she could not have some. Her husband saw her looking so sad and became worried. "Dear wife, what is the matter?" he asked. "Oh," she answered, "I feel that I must eat some of the Rapunzel from the garden behind our house." Her husband loved her very much and thought, "I must get my wife what she desires. I will get some of that Rapunzel no matter what." What do you think he's going to do? Let's see. That night, he climbed over the wall into the witch's garden. He quickly filled a sack with Rapunzel and brought it back to his wife. At once, she ate it with delight. But she liked it so much and it tasted so good that the next day she longed for it twice as much as she had before. So that night, the husband climbed the wall again and picked more Rapunzel. He turned around to go back when he saw before him the angry eyes of the witch. "How dare you climb into my garden, you thief!" she hissed. "How dare you steal my Rapunzel? You will pay dearly for this." "Oh, please," said the terrified man, "be merciful. I only did this because I had to. My wife, you see, she's having a baby, and she was looking out the window and saw your Rapunzel, and she needed some more than anything else in the world." "Well, then," said the witch, "you may have as much Rapunzel as you want, on one condition. When your wife has a child, you must give it to me. I will take care of the child like it's my very own." Do you think that the man should do it? What do you think? I don't know. The man was so flustered that he said, "Yes," and then he tried not to think any more of it. But later, at the very moment when his wife gave birth to a lovely baby girl, the witch appeared and reminded him of his promise. She brought the child to live with her. The witch named the baby Rapunzel. Why do you think the witch would name her Rapunzel? Because the dad was taking all of her Rapunzel, right? And she grew up to be a beautiful girl. When Rapunzel was 12 years old, the witch took her deep into the forest. There, she locked her in a tower with no steps and no door, only a small window near the top. Why do you think she would lock her in the tower? When the witch wanted to be let into the tower, she would cry down from the ground, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Rapunzel had beautiful long hair that shone like gold. When she heard the voice of the witch, she would open the window and let her hair fall down, down, down to the ground far below. Then the witch would hold on to the hair, and climb up to the tower window. A few years passed on like this when one day the king's son was riding through the forest and he came upon the tower. As he came near, he heard a voice singing so sweetly that he stood still and listened. It was Rapunzel in her loneliness trying to pass away the time with sweet songs. The prince wanted to go inside to see her, so he looked for a door in the tower, but there was none. He rode home, but the song had entered into his heart, and every day he went into the forest and listened to it. Once, as he was standing nearby, behind some trees, who should come up to the tower but the witch? The prince watched amazed as the witch called out, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Then he saw how Rapunzel let down her long hair and how the witch climbed up it and went into the tower. He thought, "So that is the ladder. Well then, I too will climb it." The next day, as dusk fell, he came to the tower and cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." And she let down her hair, and the prince climbed up. Rapunzel was greatly frightened when she saw the prince, for she had never seen a man before. But he spoke kindly to her and told her how her singing had entered his heart and how he felt he could have no peace until he had seen her. Then Rapunzel forgot her fear, and when he asked her to be his wife, she put her hand in his and said, "I would gladly go with you, but I have no way to get out. Do this for me. The next time you come, bring a bundle of silk. Then bring some more each time you come, and I will make a ladder of it. When it is finished, I will use it to climb down from this ladder, and then you will carry me far away from here on your horse." They agreed that he would come to her every evening, since the witch only came during the daytime. So things went on this way until one day Rapunzel, without thinking, said to the witch, "Why do you climb up so slowly while it takes the king's son only a moment?" "Oh, you wicked child," screamed the witch. "I thought I had hidden you from all the world, but you have betrayed me." In a rage, the witch grabbed a pair of sharp scissors and cut off poor Rapunzel's hair. Then the witch took Rapunzel from the tower and brought her to live even deeper into the forest. Later that day, when evening fell, the prince came and called out, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Uh-oh, what do you think's going to happen? The witch lowered the cut-off hair and the prince climbed up. But instead of seeing his dear Rapunzel at the top, he saw the gleaming eyes of the witch. "Aha!" she cried and laughed at him. "You came for your darling, but the sweet bird is no longer in its nest and sings no more. You will see her no more." Filled with horror and sadness, the prince fell from the tower. The fall did not hurt him badly, but the thorns on which he fell cut his eyes and blinded him. So, blind and alone, he wandered into the forest for several years, eating only roots and berries and weeping over the loss of his dear Rapunzel. At last, he came to a place in the forest where Rapunzel herself was wandering. He heard a sweet voice that he thought he had heard somewhere before. When he went toward the sound, Rapunzel saw him, wrapped her arms around his neck, and wept. When Rapunzel's tears touched the prince's eyes, he could see again. He was both happy and amazed because he thought he'd never see her again. And so the prince took Rapunzel to his kingdom to be his bride, where she was welcomed with great joy. They were soon married, and they lived happily ever after. The end. All right, let's do some comprehension questions and word work. But if you need to hop up and take a quick break, go ahead and do that. In the beginning of the fairy tale, what does the woman long for from the witch's garden? Rapunzel, which is a type of lettuce. What happened to her before she got some? She was really sad, right? And she was pale. What did her husband do? He steals some Rapunzel from the garden. Do you think that there was another way that maybe he could have solved that problem? He might have gone to the store. He could have asked nicely. When the witch catches the husband in the garden, he asks her to be merciful. What does the witch then say to the husband that he must do if he wants the Rapunzel from the garden? She said that he must give his child to the witch when the baby is born. Do you think that he makes a good decision when he agrees? I don't think so. What does the witch name the baby? Rapunzel. Why do you think she names her Rapunzel? Maybe because she's named after the Rapunzel that her father stole from the garden, right? And what happens to Rapunzel when she's 12 years old? The witch locks her in the tower and has no doors and only one window near the top. How does the witch visit Rapunzel? She climbs up her hair. All right, look at this picture. How does the prince discover Rapunzel? One day when he's riding through the forest, he hears her singing, right? And what happens when the witch finds out that the prince had been visiting Rapunzel? She was really mad, right? And what did she do? She cut off Rapunzel's hair, and then she tricked the prince and pushed him out the window, right? And he went blind from the thorns. Does the fairy tale have a happy ending? Yeah, why? What happens at the end? The prince finds Rapunzel, and his tears allow him to see again. And then they get married and they live happily ever after. Okay. What kinds of things in this story are fantasy or things that couldn't really happen? Rapunzel's tears healing his blindness, right? That's not something that could really happen in real life. In the read aloud you heard, he quickly picked a handful of Rapunzel and he brought it back to his wife at once, and she ate it with delight. Say the word delight with me. Delight. Can you robot voice it? Delight. Delight means joy or great pleasure. I look forward to the warm weather and flowers of spring with delight each year. Tell me something that makes you feel delight. Make sure you use the word delight when you say it. Very good. So now, since we already filled out these parts, and I know that they're not there anymore, but we're just going to pretend that they were. So what is something that was similar between all three stories? What is something that was similar between all three stories? There was a royal family. They ended in, I'm going to put H for happily, E for ever, and A for after. What else? There was a baby, right? Oh, that's my little baby picture. That's kind of a weird looking baby, but it's okay. All right, what's something that only happened in Rapunzel? There was a witch. I'm going to make a broomstick for a witch, even though this witch did not have a broomstick. There was Rapunzel, the plant. There's my Rapunzel. What else? I don't know. I can't think of much. Ooh, what is something that's in common between Sleeping Beauty and Rapunzel? There was a tower, right? Because remember, Sleeping Beauty, when she got pricked, she was wandering around and she went into the tower part. Okay. What about between Rapunzel and Rumpelstiltskin? Think about the promises that those characters had to make. That they would give away their baby. I'm going to say give, and then I'll draw another picture of a baby. Maybe this one will look better than the other one. Baby. Okay. And if you thought of some other ones, awesome. That's awesome, awesome. All right, let's clear my beautiful pictures. Okay, and come on. Okay. Let's make sure we hit all of our learning objectives for today. Did we review the elements of fairy tales? Mm-hmm. Did we identify characters, settings, and events in a fairy tale? Mm-hmm. Did we demonstrate an understanding of the word delight? And did we use a graphic organizer to compare and contrast 3 fairy tales? Absolutely. All right, guys. Great job. I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.